Thank you for taking interest in this emerging leaders think tank for Latino church planners. We all share a common commitment to see the kingdom of God grow among the growing population of Hispanics in the United States. The Hispanic Latino population in the United States is now over 60 million people, or 18% of the population. Hispanic immigrants and other immigrant communities from Global South have continued to plant and multiply evangelical churches across the U.S., and this reality is changing the face of Christianity in America. In 2019, Lifeway Research did a study of Hispanic Latino church planting in the U.S. It's important for us to look at the current realities of the Hispanic church. A key finding in this study is of the churches who responded, 80% of the lead pastors were born outside of the United States, their first generation. 8% were born in the U.S. with both parents born outside the U.S., their second generation, and 12% were born in the U.S., and so were their parents, their third generation. These same churches revealed that 66% of their members are first-generation immigrants, 22% are second generation, and 12% are third generation. What these measurable statistics tell us is that the growth of the Latino evangelical church in the United States is due to many immigrant pastors who have planted a church alone without a team. They felt a call to a geographic location, but they planted inside a church building that they could afford. Most were theologically trained in a Bible institute or a church-based theological school. Some have studied in a Bible college or seminary. Only about 25% have ever attended a week-long intensive training on church planting. Prayer is a key to their success. 75% of the pastors have recruited prayer partners to support them in their work. Most pastors are bivocational, and 50% work 40 hours per week in another job outside of their church. Their churches are focused on reaching Hispanic families whose primary language is Spanish. 22% are doing bilingual services. Most used the family model to plant their church, but others also used a mix of the ministry-based, attractional, and missional models. Most believe that new commitments to Christ are the best measure of church success. They conduct their worship services in Spanish and have no plans to transition to English. Their churches are not self-sufficient, having an average attendance of 80 people or less and an average income of $35,000 per year. 33% of these pastors have not received any income from their churches after 5 years of ministry. You could sum up the Lifeway Research report by saying, Hispanic immigrant church planners do more with less. The reason for this upcoming Emerging Leaders think tank for Latino pastors is that there are significant shifts happening in the Latino population in the U.S. According to Pew Research, over 60% of Latinos in the U.S. are 35 years old or under. The median age of Latinos is 29 years old, but the median age of U.S.-born Latinos is 20. U.S.-born Latinos are 81% of those 35 years old and younger, and nearly 50% are under 18 years old. A vast number of these young Latinos are second generation whose parents were born outside the U.S. and speak Spanish as their primary language. The future of the Latino church is young, bilingual, multi-ethnic, and multicultural. There is not only a population shift among Latinos, there is also a paradigm shift in the model of the Latino church. The church I described earlier in this video would be the traditional Latino church. They use the family, ministry-based, and attractional models. The Lifeway Research study also revealed that Latino churches that were influenced by the missional model of church had more people in attendance than those who used the more traditional models. And those who did more ministry outside of their worship centers or church buildings grew larger. Don Dietrich, a denominational leader, said, "A healthy missional model will view outreach to the community as its primary mission. Missional churches embrace the idea of God's kingdom being people, not a place, a building, or a denomination. These churches act out of biblical principles of mission within cultural context to the place in which people live. The focus of the family model church is to reach their community, Hispanics and immigrants, but the missional model focuses on reaching the community in which they live." Maricela Hernandez, a church planner and denominational leader in South Texas, reflected that the traditional Hispanic church builds its ministry around a church building. The building becomes the center of evangelism, and people invite friends and family to come to their church to receive their miracle from God. She also commented that for planters with a missionary focus, building the temple is not the most important thing. They focus on reaching souls for Christ and fulfilling the specific mission for which they have come to that community. The planter is looking for some very strategic meeting places to get closer to the people he wants to reach. Josue Rubio, an immigrant church planter in the mountain communities in Colorado, said that there is a need to rethink the ecclesiology of the immigrant community. He commented that Latinos relating faith to buildings is a strong cultural reality from Latin America. Therefore, the move to a missional model of church is very challenging. To learn or imitate new models is like learning to speak a new language. Embracing a new ecclesiastical paradigm often only happens well within emerging generations or for Latinos in the second and third generations. The missional church builds its ministry around the spiritual and physical needs of the community. Daniel Prieto, a Latino church planting leader in the Foursquare Church, said, "Pastors need to gain God's prophetic image of their city." He said, "Our Latino churches today need to be missional and integral, creating a culture of dialogue with genuine expressions of love and concern." He said, "Pastors must learn to exegete their city and create relationships of trust. They must also expend much of their time in prayer and ministry building healthy communities, not just liturgical congregations." I recently had an interview with Diego Castaño, a young Latino church planter in Pueblo, Colorado. His church is transforming a neighborhood on the east side of Pueblo. He said there is a big difference between a community church and a commuter church. The commuter church drives to a building in a neighborhood where they do not live. A community church lives and incarnates the gospel of Christ to its multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multicultural neighbors. He also said, as Christians and Latinos, we need to accept the fact that most of America live in neighborhoods with a very diverse demographic that requires church planters to embrace the missional model. A community church is a place in a neighborhood where everyone feels welcomed, a place where different ethnicities gather, speak different languages, and eat different cultural foods. The community church impacts the neighborhood. It knows its needs and challenges. It has the power to drive away crime, to better education, and create specific programs that are culturally relevant to the needs of the people. God has multiplied Hispanic congregations all across America. The average Latino immigrant has been in the United States for 10 years, according to Pew. The next wave of church planters will come from second and third generation Hispanics who are bilingual and bicultural. America needs a revival in the church and a spiritual awakening in the population. I believe the second and third generation Latinos are uniquely positioned by God for this hour to plant multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multicultural churches that are transforming their communities. I look forward to talking more with you about planting missional Latino churches at our virtual base camp on June the 29th. We will see you then.